Europe, the continent where the modern civilization was born, and sadly almost brought to ashes in 1914, the year when one of the most horrifying human acts began, the First World War. These are the maps that document the viciousness of both the Triple Alliance and the Triple Entente that stood on the opposite edges of this massive chessboard that was ranging from Paris to Moscow and from Berlin to Istanbul and Baghdad. These are their moves, captured in the spotlight. Behold. All began as early on as the late 19th century, when a series of situations damaged the relationships between the states that formed the European continent. Worst off were the bonds between France and Germany, as those were shattered into pieces with the Franco-Prussian War that signified the uprising of a new superpower in the Central Europe, Germany. This tightly packed barrel of explosive powder that made the whole Europe tremble with fear was set off by the assassination of the Archduke Franz Ferdinand in Sarajevo. Europe was facing an unavoidable war conflict, and with the modern weaponry, it was destined to be a conflict to be remembered. Plans were made, some better, some worse. However, they all had one thing in common. They all failed spectacularly. The Western Front, also known as the main theatre of the Great War, a place where the superpowers demonstrated their militaristic superiority, or at least attempted to. Though Germany was hoping for a swift start through Belgium, their plans were soon in ruins, as Belgium did fight back and costed Germany the precious time they didn't have. Their progress through France wasn't much better. True, they were just 20 kilometers from Paris, and they were reaching it fast. By the 5th September 1914, Paris was finally visible to German eyes. However, during the Battle of the Marne, they were pushed back by the French army that finally gained its full strength, and so the front became a stable one, the trench warfare. This lasted from 1915 to early 1916. However, then the infamous battles of Verdun and Somme occurred. During these war-defining battles, the German army lost about 1 million soldiers, a number that later became important when the army was short on both the supplies and the men. With the new recruits that weren't properly trained, nor did it have proper equipment, the German army was meant to lose the war. By 1917, the American forces arrived. The Germans were already retreating, and peace broke out soon after. The Eastern Front was spectacularly great in its size, reaching from the Baltic Sea to the Black Sea. It was the most massive front of the First World War, and the number of fallen soldiers was just adequate to that. Just the number of fallen Russian soldiers was 2.25 million. The first major attack of the Eastern Front was the Russian attack on Germany, and due to Germany's occupied troops on the Western Front, the army had a quick pass through the land. However, new German troops were redeployed here, and the Russians were forced to retreat. Though this front was stabilized, it was by no means as stabilized as the Western Front, and so the Russian army was able to pass through Poland, destroy the city of Lodz in the process, and fight near the borders of Austro-Hungarian Empire. In 1916, after 2 years of fighting on the borders, the Russian army commenced a movement to the south, where they wanted to enter the empire through Romania, a nation that had joined the Triple Entente. The armies of both Russia and Romania passed through Transylvania. However, they were forced to retreat as the Russian Empire was crumbling down. Any further progress was halted by the communist overthrow in Russia, and so the Eastern Front collapsed under the fall of Russia's Tsar government. Though the Battle of the Gallipoli wasn't the longest one, it certainly did leave an impact on the world, as it was the only front where the Triple Entente failed to win. A truce had to be issued with the Ottoman Empire and the Triple Entente. However, it weren't only the British that died here, but people from the whole of British Empire, mainly Australia and New Zealand. This event also symbolizes one of the proudest moments of Turkish history, as it was here when the modern Turkish state was finally created. The Italian front is the youngest one of the ones mentioned here, as Italy joined the war later on in 1915 after distancing itself from the war and the Triple Alliance. Italy was hoping that with this war they could gain some land from Austria-Hungary. However, the war soon became a trench warfare just like the Western Front, only this time it was fought in the Alps. This continued until the significant Battle of Vittorio Veneto, where the Austro-Hungarian army was crushed after Italians broke through the defense. This was one of the reasons why Austro-Hungarian Empire collapsed after the First World War. When the war was finally over, on the 11th of November 1918, Europe was left in ruins, especially France and Poland, as those were areas where the heaviest battles were fought. Despite the whole destruction of Europe, the world was celebrating over the end of this massive 4-year conflict. But it wasn't the whole world. Germany was slowly disintegrating into a spiral of war reparations and became ruins of once proud monarchy. Kaiser escaped from the country just as the Treaty of Versailles was signed. The Austro-Hungarian Empire wasn't in any way better off. In fact, there was no empire to begin with. This led to a creation of many states that now occupied the Central Europe and the end of monarchy in Central and Eastern Europe. This war changed the world and propelled the civilization into a new century, though the mankind had to pay a great price to achieve it.